Hi, I'm Seamless, and it is still Wednesday when I'm recording this, but it will definitely not be Wednesday by the time you're seeing this, but it was time for a new viewer track review video. And today we're going to get started straight up with Tarutrit. Tarutrit? Shit, there's a lot of ways I can think to pronounce that. You know, I might just be inventing numerous ways to pronounce things for fun. Anyway, 8-bit explosion, here comes. Once we zoom in properly and don't start in the middle of the song on the very first one, that would be something. Alrighty. Wow. That's definitely a delivery of the title description. So when it comes to 8-bit stuff, I'm not, there's not a lot I can say about it just because all that I know about it is that it is a complication that has more to do with history than it does tremendous limitations in music. Like, if we say the word 8-bit, a palette of sound and like a feeling, an aesthetic, you know, that makes sense. That comes across, and that's what this all feels like. But about 100%, I don't know if this actually like adheres to actually being that, being actual 8-bit, or a lot of times what that will mean is that a track or song or whatever integrated actual gear from the hardware that ran these things to be as authentically limited as possible, so that whenever you're hearing is given the full excuse for its crappiness, I guess. But this is, I'm not sure that is that, but I like the application of the aesthetic while keeping the power. That's usually what is missing from stuff like that. It is 8-bit, sure, but it's usually like the kind of, isn't this fun? Isn't this what it's like doing a period piece for fun? This is a lot more like, okay, what if it had power? And I like that approach a lot better. And this is very good. It's very well laid out. It's very like engaging. It has that sort of, has many video game aesthetics in there in terms of like its scores and usage and arrangements and movements and that kind of thing. That seems like a lot of overcomplicated words to be throwing at something like this, but that is the reality. Anyway, moving on, we have Chlora by Kursoro. Wow, that's a sausage. All right, guys, let's get our sausage on. Do. Here we go. This is a fun beat. It had power, a little too much power on the snare, although it's not really possible to have that to be true. In my opinion, you can have more power all the time. And really what that means is that there's just not enough power in other stuff. In particular, the guitar that's in here is not loud enough and not present enough to be a guitar that's in here. It is, I guess I really, the chemists, trying to think of references for who does this kind of stuff right. Like, there's always old pendulum and whatnot, but this is a bit different, obviously, than those two examples even. And the differences are fine. This breakdown in the middle was interesting. Like, the actual full break was weird. And then this part, like, you get to kind of see the main element, like, you get mixed in with stuff. You can actually quite see pretty visually pretty well. This is all very well mixed. I think how well mixed it was might be contributing to sort of the off feeling a bit, where, like, the power distribution. So here's what I mean by that. I'm about to play it again. The difference in level appearing in the higher frequencies up here is pretty much what I actually want to see for something like this in the low frequencies. I'm looking at this post master. I have no idea if this is what it's looking like going into your mastering, but generally speaking, I want to be able to visually identify a kind of dynamic range out of some stuff. And right now, it's really only true for the higher frequencies, and a lot of the mids and lows are taken up by what they're taken up by, and then the things that are there on them aren't able to lead on them. Like a guitar element like that. It's it's originally designed to be something in a band that's like foremost in frontward. And if it's not that, it kind of feels weird. And the way you make it that is you treat it like a lead instrument, which is a bit hard because it is a rhythm application, right? We're playing chords and stuff, which means like you sidechain it, but not so hard. And like it gets mixed, but other stuff gets cut for it and not the other way around. And that is how you get like guitar power to have power against electronic stuff, because the guitar power that's used to being the most powerful thing really physically can't the way that it is the way that synths are in comparison. Lots of finagling has to do, and like there was lots of finagling done in this track, and it was pretty good. Like it was also very inventive, like the way that this turned into the real track again. Because like originally I heard this came into this section, I was like, this is different song syndrome if I ever heard it, and then it honestly picked it back up. That was pretty cool. This was a little short, kind of odd outro, but it has no impact on the quality of the track. It just kind of felt like this was about to go other places, and it just didn't. But yeah, good jorb. Coming up next, we have some Napalm by Integer. Whee! Here we go. is a pretty sweet sketch of stuff. It definitely comes to its own, like, in this section, and makes the most sense. During the rest of this section is a bit weird. Like, actually, in the very beginning, this felt almost as, this was a fine beginning. This, like, foreshadowing you have of, like, the main bit could probably come in from even longer, because it is still pretty jarring when it comes in. And then, but most of this also just feels unrelated to what ends up being the drop, and also is your sub is an entire octave too high. I don't know if that was a choice you made or not, but you can tell it's too high because the base of the samples that are in there are below it. That's something that we don't want. The sub is like this was pretty, like, where's, yeah, like this bit. This was the same height. You just have a really high sub. Wow. Well, that's going to do some weird stuff to your power. It might be real loud. It probably feels real loud, but the design for these elements are for the sub to be in range and replacing those elements. Like, although these samples that are in here seem to be pretty well balanced, like their low power isn't like muddy or ugly. And your distribution of like the leveling and that kind of thing, all that was great. Like, this whole thing has a lot of didn't push hard enough syndrome, in terms of, like, it could be louder and it could be crushed harder, but it felt like you were being careful. And, you know, as a reasonable expectation to try and be careful about some stuff, but the sort of the dopeness quotient is a result of not trying that hard to be that careful. And also a sub at the correct register. Otherwise, a fun bunch of ideas that could be a totally cool track. It kind of might actually be more like 2 whole cool tracks, but I like the individual bits that can be done into stuff. Coming up next, we have Bright by Amity. Sure looks that way. All right. Well, I think we just witnessed the maximum perfect version of this track. The kind of track that this track is. Like, oh crap, I forgot. I saw that earlier, and I was like, oh no, I'll just do it again. Maybe with the exception of that being there, but all of that, this stuff, this is like the sail track or any given overwork track. It's one of those, but this is like the best of those. Has every single quality nailed all the way down, and up into including additional complexity that doesn't reach into the range of being bro step. This is like the least that kind of like sound design, like show-offy kind of thing, and everything about the like uplifting musical texture of this progression, which just was the whole time, and it was enough because it was so perfect. Everything is mixed together beautifully. All the noise is well balanced, and like the high roll off is perfect. The depth and the negative space is perfect. This is so perfect. This is such a hardcore on point version of this track. It is honestly very impressive. Good job, Amity. Coming up next, we have Corkscrew by ExoniK. Oh, that looks a bit much. Let's see what it's like.
It's the end of an era at Alton Towers today. The Corkscrew, Europe's first double-loop roller coaster, but you knew that, is being retired after thrilling the crowds for 28 years. The park is now in its closed season, but has been opened especially today for thrill seekers to have one last ride. In its time, it's carried over 43 million riders and travelled over 820,000 miles. The park is now in its closed season, but has been opened especially today for thrill seekers to have one last ride.
Well, that was a crazy dark track, and the textural devastation present in here was a sight to behold. Like, look at that. Wow. And it felt. Did you feel that? Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Like, you got yourself into a textural presence there. This is a lot of low notes. I like them a lot. Like, these kinds of sounds where you make the bass and then, like, you can kind of see it fading in here. This is a really low note. That's what makes these, like, kind of feelings. And every once in a while, there's also just double kicks and stuff, which you can kind of, like, this is what a saw wave looks like, really slowed down. Well, this obviously isn't a saw wave, has harmonic activity way beyond that, but to do this sort of stuff, what you have to do, you have to have a sound that basically has infinite harmonic, like, activity up the spectrum, so that when you play it so low that it's not a note anymore, it's an individual, like, envelope oscillation. There's still, like, high frequency activity for you to even discern it's there, and it's not just like a bumpy, like, kicky experience. So the ways you do that are to make a crazy distorted, not so highly multiplied, probably aliasing sound, and then lower that down, and then there's activity. Or you just multiply the lowered activity, the extra distortion and crap. And that's what some of these things will react to feel like. Although the rest of the things that were done to the things in here are just a large list of cool stuff. Like this main sound. Like, wow town. Lots of that. Was that form? Or is it like a table kind of experience? I mentioned form because a little reminds me of some granular sampling-esque plugin type deals. But I like this track a lot. I like the textural devastation and very interesting feelings that are generated from it. It's very unique and modern. I dig it. Up next, we have Footprint by MBS. Zoom. Oh, here we go. Nope. Always one of them. That track had some travel in it. I dig the beat. I like the smooth break kind of aesthetic of it. what it really reminds me of is MIDI video game music from the 90s for video games like Descent. That did actually have like MP3 CD quality like music in it, but if you didn't select it to do that, you could also just run regular MIDI music. And this is sort of the stuff that it sounded like really kind of just sort of smooth, like a beat going on, and then it progressed. Progressive stuff is an interesting choice, mostly because like with the sort of the point of progressiveness in music is to do a new thing and go to a new place, and not necessarily to tie it all together. Like, this is a much more contained element than some of those tracks, but this is it feels like it would work well, honestly, for that purpose. A pretty kick-ass kind of backgroundy, like loungy, like yeah, it's kind of in it. If there's a vocalist on it, it would be a killer track. It'd be one of those, kind of rad. What I find interesting is it's incredibly loud. It's nice and sausage and whatnot, but my Maximus here is telling me it's peaking, but it's not. It's not actually peaking, which confuses me. But that I could just be reading this wrong or linking it wrong. I might have the routing wrong, but the point is that if this is a pre-master, that's a really good pre-master. If this is a master, it's extremely coherent and together. And I gotta wonder how much of that was like a thing you wanted, or how much of this was you, like a previous track, trying to be careful, as you might have imagined you should have, quote unquote, should have. I don't know, but the improvements I would suggest to make to this are mostly about filling things in and like maybe making more variations over longer times and periods, and maybe unifying this in a less progressive context. But mostly that's because I'm trying to get away from it from sounding like the older MIDI music. But I don't really know what your targets were. So good job pretty much all together. Yeah. For our last track today, we have Death Choke by Hoodoo Blonde. That is an intensely dynamic mix. I'm curious as hell what this sounds like.
These moments don't go back towards you. I'm hesitating to throw myself at you. And I'm waiting for how I see things turning out. And I'm waiting for how I see things turning out. And I'm waiting for, and I'm waiting, see things happen. And I'm waiting. These moments don't go back towards you. I'm hesitating to throw myself at you.
This is a very strange track. I say because when I first saw this, I'm like, oh, very dynamic. And then that normally means that, like, it either didn't go so hard or what I'm looking at is a pre-master. But this does not sound like a pre-master. This sounds like a beautiful, wonderful track. This is super cool. But this has a problem. And it's true that dynamic range is cool and all, and it's nice that we can be so low and so high. But this is going to create the kind of problem that causes people to turn the movie up they're watching so they can hear what people are saying and then turn it down real fast once the action shows up. There's a reason why we are always trying to like compress dynamic range and usually equate that with being good. It's because it's not everyone has a range that like can work for that. And what does sound freaking great for some people being like, oh, that's super great and super low, then super loud. Like for everyone else, it's like, what was that? What the hell did you just say? Oh, fuck, turn it down. Like that's why there's less than what seems like the best possible amount of dynamic range, even though we live in this sort of future where we can pick and choose how much dynamic range we have. So really my only primary actual issue with this is that especially the lyrics should be a little bit louder during elements that are not loud, and so it all carries together. But other than that, this is art. This track rules. Like this would be like if The Weeknd did stuff I would listen to. This is super cool. Good job. Yeah, wow, damn. That's everyone else for today. I don't really have anything to say about this. Like every single good, like this is all the right choices. What the heck kind of kick is that? Like the side chaining and the pressure on it and like with the motion, the bits that are loud are the right kind of loud and forceful and nice. It's just very good. Like it's clearly you knew what you were doing and you chose to do this. All I got to say about it is that might not be a great idea based on humans. And I'm sure you also have experienced, turning the stuff up this year. People are saying in some show and then turning it down again because the explosions were exploding. Yeah. Anywho, if anyone has any questions about this, please let me know. If you'd like to have one of your tracks considered for one of these videos, head on over to the Discord channel, which is in the description of this video. There is a submission area. There are people there to help you out with it. There's rules. Just do all the whole thing the way it says, and eventually you may get randomly chosen for your track to appear in one of these videos, which is how it works. Yeah, questions, ask them. As usual, please have a nice day. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. I got that way out of order, but whatever. It happened. Haha!